This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I would like to first thank John for inviting me. Thank you so much for that. I would also like to thank everyone who has made the time to attend this event, and I'll just get right into it. Social entrepreneurship and young African innovators. So to begin with, I will just highlight a few issues that I think are important when we talk about social entrepreneurship. To my understanding, a social entrepreneurship venture is any for-profit organization that is aimed primarily at social impact. So it's any business or any venture that you're making profit in, but your main goal is to address something, address a challenge in your community. So the key issue here is social impact. So often these social entrepreneurship ventures are usually creative ventures. So we've seen people come up with apps, with creative ways of doing things. They also embrace innovative means and tools. So one of the tools that I will talk about later on is the use of ICTs, which is a common tool that young people use in social entrepreneurship. The other key thing to consider when you're talking about social entrepreneurship is what is your values and principles, what I've called, what is your guiding ethic. So if you're, for example, trying to address a challenge in your community, say there's I don't know, shortage of water, or there's the feeder roads in your community are not that well kept, then the first thing before you even try to address that challenge with a social entrepreneurship venture is to ask yourself, what are my values and principles? And having a guiding ethic is important because it will see you all through, and it will also guide your accountability, which I'll talk about next. So such values include you heavily invested in the welfare of the community that you're serving. Probably you have feminist values as you value such values, but it can vary depending on the person in question. So moving on to accountability, having a guiding ethic will inform your accountability. Now that social entrepreneurship includes ventures that are aimed at social impact, your accountability comes first to the community that you're serving. So the community that you're working with, of course, people who come in to back your social entrepreneurship, funding partners and other partners are important. But you first accountable to the people that you're serving. So it's important to keep that in mind. And now I will move next on to social entrepreneurship and social change. So we've all had, how social entrepreneurship drives change and we have very many examples. And this speaks to the fact that it's true, social entrepreneurship can be a key tool to drive change. And just because social entrepreneurs aim to address direct challenges that the communities are facing. So in this way, by speaking to the direct needs of the community, then social entrepreneurs are able to drive change. So it's important here to note that you're talking about direct challenges. It's not something that you sat down somewhere in an office or somewhere far away from your community and decided, oh, we want to do this, we want to bring about this venture to the community. It has to start with what the community wants. So it has to start with identifying the needs that the community has. And in that way, it has the potential to drive social change. And that speaks to my next point here, that these ventures build with and for the people, and that's why they are better at driving social change. So it's not something that is done on to the people. It's something that you as a social entrepreneur does with the people and for the people. So this means that at some point, if you're starting out as a social entrepreneur, you have to go to the community and speak to to community members and say see what are their most pressing immediate needs, and how do they have ideas of what can be done and how it can be done. And from all this consulting with the community, then you can together build build this social venture that will address these challenges. So to effectively cause change, it's important for social entrepreneurs to create networks and to work with other actors. We already know that there are many people doing community work in communities. We have the civil society, we have local grassroots organization, we have the local government, and we also have business people, and we have the community members themselves. So it's important for social entrepreneurs to know that they're not working in a vacuum or in an island. And so it's important to position themselves within this network of community actors. And when it's done this way, then this is a good ecosystem that can nurture social change. I will now move on to social entrepreneurship and young people. So I guess the first thing that we have to think about when we talk about social entrepreneurship and young people is that young entrepreneurs need to be nurtured. We have seen lots of cases where we have brilliant ideas from young people in, I don't know, say, for example, from Kenya, since I'm from Kenya. But these people have zero support. I'm talking especially about very young people who have come up with brilliant ideas to address the challenges that they've witnessed in their communities, but they lack support. So it's important that we have systems and institutions to support young people. For example, if we think of very young people at the, I don't know, at the high school or primary school level, it's important to have mentorship programs. So in these mentorship programs, we could, this is a good environment to support young people who are very, very innovative, and to get other people who are already well established and probably experts in this area to support these young people. So it's important to create programs such as mentorship programs to nurture and support young people. And as we speak about supporting young people, it's important for to keep in mind that there will be many people trying to support your organization or your venture. But you have to go back to your guiding ethic. What are your values, and who are you accountable to? So in that way, it means that you're not going to get co-opted because people have different interests. There are people who will come to support your organization because they probably want to use you, or they probably want to gain political currency. So it's important to be aware that there are people who will come to you as a young entrepreneur to try to support your venture, but for their own interest. So be aware that there are people like that. And so other people, organizations, and governments, and say development agencies, it's important that these agencies do not try to co-opt young entrepreneurs. And I guess I must mention this. We cannot all be social entrepreneurs. At this point, we have seen social entrepreneurship getting pushed down to to young people, like you should get into entrepreneurship, you should do this and this. No, not everyone can be a social entrepreneur, and that is why it's important to know that you're not doing this thing just for the sake of it. You're doing it for the community, with the community. So it's important to have that value and that that drive. But what is driving you, right? So that's why it's important to not just tell young people to be social entrepreneurs for the sake of it. We can all contribute to community building and community change in different ways. Yeah, so let's all do what we feel called to do. That is why it's important to need for you to answer the why question, as I just mentioned. Why do you want to do this? Do you want to do this because it's the thing to do now, or do you want to do this because you have heard that there's some finances somewhere for such kind of activities, or do you want to do this because you have identified a certain need in your community that you feel you can address if you did start this venture? So it's important to first ask yourself those questions before you even begin your social entrepreneurship venture. And now I will move on to the section between social entrepreneurship, young people, and ICT. I guess ICT is just one of the greatest tools that we've seen that has impacted social entrepreneurship in a great way. So we have seen a lot of young people embracing ICTs, using technology to start up, social ventures that can address challenges in their communities. For example, we've seen people start up applications that help help communities in rural areas track down markets so that they know when and where to sell their produce. So in this way, ICT is very, very important for social entrepreneurship. So it's important for young people who are thinking of joining, or rather starting a social entrepreneurship venture as a means to contributing to community development, to harness the power of ICTs. And ICTs is quite broad. It could be anything, right? It could be, the internet, especially now that we have increased access and connectivity. That's one thing. It could be handheld devices now that almost every other person has access to a cell phone. So it's important for you to think through all these two options that you have and see which one will be more effective for you as a social entrepreneur. So the other way to think of ICTs is to think about how you can amplify your impact as a social entrepreneur. So this means that you can probably reach more people, or you can probably, build more networks. As I just said before, it's important to work with other people, when you're trying to cause social change. So ICT is it's a great way to form networks with not only people in your community, but people in other communities, and even nationally and even at the global levels. There's this interconnectedness of people now, and that comes with a lot of advantages. So it's important to think about how you can use ICTs to amplify and impact. To amplify your impact and form networks with other people doing similar kind of work. It's also very important now that we're talking about ICT for young people who are, in social entrepreneurship or people thinking to get into it. It's important to consider safety, and especially, at this age, and I just mentioned that there will be people with different interests trying to come and work with you. It's important for you to put your safety first, and it's to know how to be safe when you're dealing with different kinds of people who want to probably work with you. So it's there are also kinds of tools or means or ways that you can use to ensure that your venture is not co-opted or used for other activities rather than what you intended. And now, finally, as I just said, social entrepreneurship is a great tool for social change, and we've already seen very many examples of people, especially young people, using social ventures to impact change in their communities. But for social entrepreneurship to actually work and drive sound social change, we need institutions and structures. So institutions like, probably where young people can go and get improve their capacity, for example, by gaining skills and probably even experience. So we need such kind of institutions and structures as well. For example, the mentorship programs that I mentioned. And when I talk about this, I talk about young, very young people who are just starting out and who are interested in doing this kind of work. So it's important that there are structures in place that can actually nurture and support these people. So it's important to support young people, and not just with trainings and building capacities and skills, but also with funds. Some of these ventures, of course, will need a great amount of capital, without which the venture wouldn't work. So it's important, especially for governments, to support its young people in that regard. And finally, social entrepreneurship alone is not the answer. We need political willpower, commitment from governments and other community members. So the social entrepreneurship alone will not address, for example, inequalities or poverty. So it's important, even as young people get into social entrepreneurship ventures, it's important to look at the larger picture, and for even young people to engage in civic participation, to push and actively demand that the government does more to, for example, set structures in place to support its young people. And I think that's it for now. I can take questions or comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy.
You're welcome.
For those who have just joined us, we've just had a presentation from Jodinet Muchiri. I hope I pronounced your name rightly. Yes, she works with.
It's actually Judianet.
Okay, the other name?
Yeah. Muchiri.
Can you pronounce the full Muchiri? Okay.
Yes.
She works with the network. She works with the network for excuse me. Sorry. She works with the Network for African Youth in Development, and she is in charge of communication and advocacy. So we just had a presentation from her. So we would, first of all, I have a set of questions I would ask Judnet, and after she responds, I would open the forum for participants to also ask their questions. So Judnet, my first question to you is, for instance, if I am a young person, I have a brilliant idea and I want to venture into social entrepreneurship. The issue of partnership, because in your presentation, you spoke about the fact that young people would need to come together to be able to, run more effective social enterprises. Now, the issue of I have an idea, and as we are getting on board, how do I protect my idea so that my idea is not corrupted? Other young people would not, in quote, steal my idea or something like of that sort. What are some key lessons that you can share with participants so that when people are, starting social enterprises or going to social enterprises, they would take note of not to have their ideas corrupted by other young people or partners?
Okay, good. That's a very great question. Thanks, John. So I would say, for example, if you're starting out, well, you have to be careful. You have to be cautious. So I would say share your ideas. Don't just share everything, right? So depending on who you're coming into partnership with, and you can easily tell, you can easily tell whether these people really want to support your venture or not. So when you're talking to such people, you probably, I can say, I have this idea, right? And I want to do this, I want to address this, but you can tell these people that I will get into this to concrete details of this when I have official confirmation that we are partnering together or we are working together. So I would say be very strategic in how you communicate your idea. So you can lightly communicate your idea without going into concrete details of it, because when you go into concrete details of your idea and how you intend to get it done, then people can easily take you how and actually go and actualize it. The other thing would be to for example, if you have the means, and probably you have a website or something, you can list down you have all your details there, and you have a section where you have current or ongoing projects, and you can list it there so that people will know, and that when you're talking to people, you say and direct them to your website, then people will already know your work is owned, your work is there and can be seen. So there's a certain ownership to it. So I think that's what I would say for now.
Okay, thank you very much, Judy.
John,
Second question.
Is it possible to add?
Okay, you can. Feel free.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Launa Bugamu here from Yalda, US, and I'm also I'm Yalda US president, and I'm also I don't know, I've just been doing some other calls, so I'm getting confused, but I'm in Botswana right now, in between Botswana and South Africa. My question, my answer, or just to give a comment on that, is also you need to protect yourself legally if your idea warrants that. And I wish one of our lawyers, Rebe, was online, etc., so they could help us understand that you can sign non-disclosure agreements and that's NDA. So a non-disclosure agreement with the person that you are working with can give you legal recourse when the person steals your idea. And I think you remember this happened to the Facebook people, because I actually went to school with the guys who came up with the original idea for Facebook, which was the dating site, and also Mark Zuckerberg as well, when I was at Harvard. And one of the things is that they had a non-disclosure agreement with Mark Zuckerberg, and that's why he had to pay them, I think it was $60 million afterwards, when he sort of stole their idea, though he changed it and then it became Facebook, but they had that legal recourse. So time and time again, we don't use our legal documents. You can find an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, online, and have the person you are presenting to or talk to sign it. And then if they copy your idea, this is worst case scenario, you're gonna get them.
Okay, thank you, Bukamu. Okay, I think once you have spoken, I would also open the floor if any participant would also like to comment on this particular issue.
Okay, it's Boniso Dlamini here. I'm from Yalda, the IEC International Executive Committee. I think I would still want to stick on the same point that is being addressed, in particular to the keywords of tools of safety, and marrying the discussion which Bukam has presented and the speaker has presented. You know, in most cases, if you're discussing a deal, you need to convince people, and there are three characteristics that comes into picture: transparency, being reliable, and being trustworthy. So now, sharing partial information at some stage, it gives them a picture that you are not here fully committed. On the second side of the story, yes, there can be an interchange of legalities, but what impression as an investor do you give me by coming with a legal approach, but yet you are coming with a genuine approach? I'm saying this out of experience, and indeed, I think the speaker perhaps can share, as John had stated, more examples, and of which I do take an example of the one that Bukamo has presented. But in some cases, you know, when you come with that legal aspect, they question your reliability, your trustworthy, and your transparency. And in what position are you coming? Are you coming in a political aspect? Yet you say you're a social entrepreneur. I just is there any possibility maybe you can expand on the tools of safety, and you can expand more on the values and integrity? Because as a African continent, our values and integrity from one business to another, they differ. Some businesses, they don't like legalities when they're brainstorming ideas, and they will enter into legalities when they are coming to an agreement. Some of them, they will disclose and have disclaimers as they start, you know, because investors, they are different, and people, they do business differently. So in a continent of ours where there is a lot of values and integrities, how do we come to reality of the tools of safety in making sure that the information communicated, it's trustworthy, it's reliable, and making sure that you are getting what you're getting? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I can speak to that.
Okay, Judy, you can go on.
Yeah, thank you so much to those two speakers. Good ideas, right? So I think trying to navigate the issue that the second speaker just highlighted, I think it depends on, you have to read the people that you're coming to partner with, right? You have to read them right. And I think because this sort of partnership would take, like, for example, it would take probably a few meetings with these people, right? So the levels of you know, how much you can disclose at what point. But I would say, because we have seen this, and we have seen people's ideas actually being taken by other people. So it's better to protect yourself. You want to be transparent, right? But you also want to let these people know that you're confident about your idea, that you know what you're doing, that you're considering partnering with them, but you also you know, you own this idea, so you can take it elsewhere. So I think it's important for you to present yourself in such a way that, you know, you're confident about your idea, right? But you also speak to these people in such a way that they know that they, you know, they're not just about to take your idea and use it, you know, for their own purposes. So I think being able to read these people, and just as the speaker said, you know, we do business differently, right? So if you're in Kenya, people negotiate in different ways. If you're in, for example, if you're in Botswana, people, you know, there are all these things that you have to take in consideration. So I would say, you know, just be aware with the people you're dealing with, and so that way you're able to, you know, to strategically communicate your idea. But also, you know, if you have to legally, you know, protect your idea, by all means, go ahead and do it.
Okay, thank you very much. I would allow for 2 questions from participants for Judy.
Yes.
Yes, I will allow 2 questions from attendees.
John. Okay, just go ahead.
All right, Sarah.
No, you can go ahead.
Thank you. I've been listening, and I thanks very much, Judy. Thank you very much, John, for great work. Now, in Africa, where I've lived most of the time, I do find that manufacturing is actually absent from the table, especially among the indigenous African. Is there anything that, Judy, from what your observations, I am in Kenya, by the way, Judy. Is there a way we can encourage young people to enter manufacturing just because to create more jobs, to get more people empowered? I sincerely believe that manufacturing is the way forward. Is there anything that anybody has an idea how best we can encourage our young people into manufacturing, especially on the basic things that we use and we import?
Okay, thank you so much. And it's good to hear that you're actually in Kenya. Yeah, good question. Because when you think of the amount of products that we currently have to import, things that we probably can make ourselves. So I think two things, right? I have seen people, not that much, but I've seen young people that are now trying to actually, make things, and it's not easy, right? Because you need the capital for one, right? And you need support, and you need technical support as well. But I've seen people, like, for example, people making soap, people making sanitary pads for girls, people making other food products, which is a good thing. And this young people who are starting out small. So one thing that it's important to highlight such stories so that other young people can see, oh, if these people can actually, make something like this, I have this idea, and I think if they can do it, I can also do it. So, just for example, if you for writers like me out there, it's important to tell these stories so that other young people can see that it can be done and learn from these people. And it's also important for other people and even other young people to support the young people who are already doing this. So buy their product, talk about them, tell your friends about their product. So that's another way, to support these people and build them from the ground up. The other thing, it has to come back to the education system. Sorry to say this, but I have to say it. We have to rethink about our education system. So this is not something that we are actively encouraged to do, right? That we probably have a shortage of this in our communities, and how can we think towards practically doing and addressing that? We're not trained to do that often, right? We're trained to probably just get into the market and get a job, get employed, and start on with life. So it's important to rethink how we are training young people and how we are giving them the skills to know that they can do these things. So I think that's where we can start. But I know for sure there are young people who are already doing these things. They're not many, but they're there. So it's important to highlight their stories as well.
Thank you, Judy.
Okay. So, Vio, your question.
Oh,
please.
yes. Okay. I just wanted to ask on the ICT, the information computer technology, and I'm asking a question which I lack information, or I do have information, but I'm doubting. Do you think social entrepreneurship is conducive for the fourth industrial revolution? I'm saying this as from early this morning till now, I've been in calls time and again. I'll make an example. I had a call with colleagues from Cameroon whom communicated that due to a shutdown, some of their internet is brought down. Recently, just before this call, I was with Bukam and other colleagues from Ethiopia. Their internet is not well connected. In South Africa, we are currently experiencing load shedding, which affects, the interconnectivity. And to some certain extent, you will understand in Zimbabwe, people were given orders to say you shouldn't do this and do that. So do you think the future is conducive for social entrepreneurship to venture or to conform in the fourth industrial revolution? Thank you.
Okay, interesting question. have to.
Hello, Judy. We can't hear you well. Judy, we can't hear you well. So if you can reposition yourself or something.
And now?
Yes, it's better now. So let's go.
Okay. So saying, I think whether or not we want it, it has to be, and we have to move with the times. And of course, we'll have challenges at the beginning, right? So, for example, you know, connectivity issues. It's a great problem, right? But also we have to move with the time. So social entrepreneurship, yes, it will be, it has to be, but also I think it's in how we embrace this thing. And that's why I said that social entrepreneurship alone is not the answer, right? We also have to have other factors in place. And I think talking about this, the greatest one is good governance. So good governance that will ensure we have sound structures. So if it's about sometimes it's about the technical part, sometimes it's about political willpower. So we have to have both, right? So good governance in place that will ensure we have sound structures. And there are different ways in which we can do social entrepreneurship. It's just that in the recent past, we've seen most of it being mediated through ICT. So yes, absolutely. I think the only difference is, if we have good governance, then we have good institutions and structures in place, including, political willpower by the government in place. Then we have an environment that can nurture social entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Judy. I think we will engage further, but for the purposes of time, I think we'll end Judy's session here. The second presenter is on the standby. So, Judy, if you can share your contacts, your email, or something, so that people can get in touch or connect with you if they want to. I don't know how you're going to do that, but if you can share it on the message.
Yeah. It's actually there on my slides, but I guess I can type it somewhere here. But anyway,
Yes,
people can find me on Twitter at JudianetM, but I'll type it. And I'm sorry I have to run, John, but thank you so much for having me.
So just drop your handles in the message plane so that people can see and pick it. So Judy, thanks very much for your time and sharing with us, and we are both grateful.
Thank you so much for having me. And if you ever want to invite me again, I'm available.
You are most welcome. You are most welcome. So yes, we will engage more. So are you leaving, please?
Yes, I have another event that I have to go to. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye. Hi, Salasi. Hi, Salasi.
Hello, John.
Hi, Salasi. Please, are you on?
Hi, John. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So good afternoon and welcome. We just had our first presentation by Judy. She touched on social entrepreneurship and the role ICT can play in social entrepreneurship. So I think you should get set to start. I will quickly introduce Celeste and then introduce the topic he will be speaking on. Then I will allow him to make his presentation, and then we will interact afterwards. Celeste is a social entrepreneur is an expert in microfinance, and
Yeah,
he
can you hear me?
Selassie, hello, hello, hello. Selassie, can you please hold on? Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you, John. Yeah, John, I'm here.
Okay, Selassie, hold
My
on.
internet
I'm
is bad.
introducing you so that.
Go on.
Okay. All right. So Selassie is a social entrepreneur.
Hey, John, I'm reconnecting. Go on.
Okay.
Yeah,
He has experience in business principles to deepen financial
I can hear you,
inclusion.
John.
Okay. He is the founder
Okay.
of IATA. IATA is a non-for-profit organization in vocational and business competency training, and they support young women to create and run sustainable enterprises. He works as the business manager for Financial Inclusion Forum Africa. Selassie is a Ghanaian, and we would allow him to make his presentation now, so we interact afterwards. So Selassie. Hello, Selassie. Hello, Selassie. Hello, Selassie. Wow. Hello, Selassie.
Hi, John.
Can you hear me, please? Yes.
Hello?
Can you hear me also?
Can you hear me, John?
Yes, I can hear
Hello,
you, please.
John, can you hear me?
I can hear you, please. I can hear you, please. I can hear you. I'm
John,
with you,
I can
Selassie.
hear you.
Okay. So Selassie, I think we started the session before you came in. So briefly, let me introduce YALDA. YALDA is a membership-based organization that seeks to create
I can hear
space
you.
and provide
My internet
opportunities
is quite
for.
bad. Share the presentation on your screen. So I can make it from here. Yeah.
Okay.
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 Sharing
Okay.
my sharing presentation.
Okay. Then let me.
Yeah.
Let me share. Let me share from my end, please. So I think you have some basic information about YALDA. So for the sake of the connectivity issues, we can go on with the presentation. So I'm sharing your presentation, please.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Okay, the floor is yours, Selassie.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So first of all, apologies for joining in on the meeting on this program late. My weekend today I've had to come out of one meeting to be able to participate in this one. So as much as possible, I'll keep the presentation very short and straight to the point, so we can all have some interaction before I check out into the meeting again. So John, if you can hear me, I have lost the screen again. If you can share it so that I can make presentation from there. Whilst John is at that, John, please confirm you can hear me.
Please, I can hear you. Is
Okay.
the screen on now?
Okay, great. So there were some few questions that we had to consider in this presentation. And one of the question is, what is the role of social enterprise in driving change in Africa? You know, but before we go into the topic, but let's first understand what a social enterprise is. You know, so basically, a social enterprise is an organization that applies commercial and business strategies, you know, or principles to solving social problems in a way that is also making profit for the shareholders of that organization. You know, and you find these shareholders to either be external people who have put money into the organization. So an example of a social enterprise is the Grameen Bank, which was started by Mohammed Yunus in Bangladesh, one of the biggest microfinance bank in the world today. But first of all, let's understand how the concept of social entrepreneurship started. Social entrepreneurship basically is a concept that was worked on extensively by Andrew Morrison. It was in his quest to find a more sustainable way of doing business, in a way that preserve the three bottom line, which is environment, financial viability, as well as social sustainability. So he came up with that. But why do we think social entrepreneurship or social enterprise is relevant now more than ever in the context of Africa? So Africa has one of the biggest stock of social challenges or problems, if I can use that term. So, for instance, there is we have problems of youth unemployment, which is resulting in us traveling across the Mediterranean to find non-existent greener pastures in Europe. We have non-access to financial services by the poor. We have sanitation problem, maternal mortality, and all of these things. So the concept of social enterprise fits in the context of Africa, like right now more than ever. If Africa indeed would be able to leapfrog itself into growth in the next decade or so. So to just give you an example, Africa has one of the biggest youth population in the world. 12% of the world's of the world's youth in terms of unemployment are found in sub-Saharan Africa. So indeed, social entrepreneurship or enterprise is needed as a tool to be able to solve some of these problems. And the role that it plays essentially is around innovation. Social enterprise innovates the way things are done. For example, let's look at power problems. You find organizations like I forgot this PEG Africa, which is doing something great around the challenge of power in the Ivory Coast. Doing something great around power in the Ivory Coast by selling solar panels and pay-as-you-go solar panels to the poor on a credit basis. You find also examples of an organization that I work on, which is a social enterprise right now, solving sanitation problems in the northern part of Ghana, which is called Samasama. So social enterprise are innovating the way business is done. That's the role they play. In the process, they are also playing a role of affordability. They bring the services closer to the people and at a more affordable price. And whilst they are doing so, they are also preserving our environment. So you rarely find any social enterprise that is operating in a way that is destroying the environment. So these examples are the role that social enterprise play in driving change in Africa today. John, if you can go to the next slide, if you can hear me. We look at the next question. Yeah, we look at the next question, which is how can the youth develop social enterprises? The lessons and considerations. So basically, there are so many problems around us in Africa. So the only way the youth can develop social enterprises, from my experience, is by being observant and having the ability to spot challenges. So, but when you spot these challenges, instead of complaining, the youth have to be able to convert this challenge into ideas that they can subsequently convert into solutions, that would solve problems of social nature. So, for instance, if there's high unemployment in your country, observe what is causing the, the, the resultant of unemployment, what factors are in there, and then carve up a solution around that. So is it something that has to do with curriculum problem? If it is, how can you come up with a solution that will solve this curriculum or skills or the teaching problems that is making you not get the requisite skills that is required in industry? So observe some of these challenges. If it is maternal mortality, what is causing people, pregnant women, to die in childbirth? If it is a problem of inadequate health facilities, how can we leverage various technologies in your community to be able to widen access and to make reach to a medical facility easier? So those are some of the ways. If the youth are able to think along this line, they'll be on the path of coming up with social enterprises. But the challenge with young people is we like to think big and start big. If we can do the reverse, we would be on a path to how we can to developing social enterprises. So you can think big, but you have to start small. We also oftentimes want to do everything by ourselves. We should be able to leverage on our networks, find people who have certain skills that you don't have, and collaborate with them. We should also be able to be flexible in our ideas and our thinking. Our solutions should evolve along the needs of the market. So if today the problem of unemployment that's causing it is changing, then the solution that you have in mind, you should be able to change it also alongside. You can only do this through a process we call the human-centered design process, where you are constantly in the market and co-creating solutions with your consumers or customers, where your solutions are crafted around their needs. Oftentimes we find young social entrepreneurs with very great ideas that do not connect with the problems in their communities. Another key factor to how the young people can develop social enterprises is self-belief. The belief in yourself that you can do this. You should have the grit to not give up when challenges face you in your process. As a person, what some of the lessons I have drawn from social entrepreneurship is it's a very lonely journey. It's a very lonely path. So before you embark on that process, on that path, you have to think carefully what your strategies are and what the backup plans would be in terms of when A fails, what plan B do you activate? So which is also very key. Let's move on to the next presentation, John. If you can just click on the second slide, on the third slide. Now, some of the challenges that youth face in developing social enterprises. There are so many challenges, but from my experience, skills is one, which happens to be very internal to the social enterprise. So the person himself or herself who has this social enterprise idea do not know anything about the solution or the sector that they want to enter into. You need to equip yourself with a deeper understanding of the sector you want to enter into. So if you are developing a solution to solve medical problems using IT as a medium, then you want to understand what the health sector service deliveries is like in your country. What are the dynamics of the IT situations in your country? These are things that you would have to learn, and you'd have to acquire certain skills like negotiation. You have to acquire skills like being able to pitch your project to people. You have to acquire skills of thinking strategically. Some of these things you can find from online training, some online training sessions, some leadership programs, and all of that. So that is people, the people around them, the people they want to serve. People are still, and this challenge is external. There's very little that the social enterprise or social entrepreneur can do about this, but you would have to be able to manage and maneuver it in a smarter way. Because there's a very thin line between NGO and social enterprise, people, especially in Africa, still confuse social enterprise as an NGO. So when it comes to patronage and paying for services, they still think it has to be free. So that presents a bigger challenge to the young people. It's a challenge they have to overcome because it leads essentially to financial sustainability. Another challenge in this same people problem is the people who would come and rally around you to support you. There's a lot of people who would easily buy into your idea and say that, hey, this chap has a great idea and they will support you. Elsewhere in other parts of the world, there are schemes that the country governments have in place that rally behind young social entrepreneurs to create social enterprises. But here it's missing. But be that as it may, if you are able to communicate very well, you'll be able to still get some people to buy into your ideas. Another challenge, which is also pretty much interlinked with people problem, is finance. You need finance to be able to get your ideas off the ground. You need finance to be able to prototype. You need finance to test the market. So some of these things, finance problem you can overcome by using the FFF means of funding, which is F, fools, friends, and family. Look at fools, I use it very carefully. Basically, people who would believe in your idea at the very initial stage. Friends are people who you can count on to support you, and family as well. These are sources of finance that you can pull in at the very initial stage of your social entrepreneurship or social enterprise journey to be successful. The key thing that is also core to all of these challenges is system. Social enterprises do not have very strong administrative or control systems in place in their organizations. So they start and they go on for a while and then they collapse, as a result of so many things. A lot of inefficiencies come in. So if you want to set out on a path of social enterprise, you have to think along this line and find out what you do differently in these areas of challenges that I have identified from my experience. At this point, I will just pause here and then get more, spare some 5 minutes answering any questions before I check into the next meeting.
Thank you, Salasi. So I think the floor is open for questions for Salasi. Who will speak? Does anyone have any question for Salasi? Salasi, let me ask this question. It looks like I'm not getting one for the meantime. Let me ask,
Okay.
you spoke about the thin line between NGO and social enterprises and the fact that people still have that mindset that services offered by social enterprises must be free and as well as NGOs. How do we marry these two? For issues of sustainability, which you have spoken about, how do young people overcome this challenge? Because this confronts young people day in, day out, that everything you offer, being a social enterprise, everything you offer must be free. How do young people overcome this challenge? How? What are some lessons?
So what I have done in the previous experience I've had was to have a very strong communication in place. So when we come to you to sell the idea, we communicate to you very well what we are offering and what our expectations are from you. So for instance, when we went out to start constructing toilets for households in the northern region, they thought it was the usual Judicef type of project that has come again, but we operated differently, and systems also helped us to get these people to understand that, hey, this is a different organization that is actually taking money to some extent for their services that they provide. So communication is key, and your branding, the branding of your organization is also key. How do you position yourself to be seen like in the community that you want to serve? And you should have also a very strong team in place who would be able to handle some of these pressures as they come from people in the community. And trust me, it's always worked. People don't know something unless you tell them what you stand for. So pay some attention to building your communication arc, and then I'm sure you'll be fine.
Thank you very much, Selassie, for that. Anyone, any question for Selassie or any contribution? Hello? Hello?
We are
Anyone
here.
with
We
any
can.
contribution? Okay.
Yeah, we are here. Maybe pick somebody random.
Okay, my Selassie, my final question to you. The issue of providing services that people really need. So you are a social entrepreneur. You have identified a problem that your perspective, a problem that you want to solve through your enterprise. Do people really need that service? Because parts in our world, even in Ghana where I stay, you see lots of projects that are implemented or done which are not being used by the citizens or the people. And what people will tell you is we've not been consulted. Even though you could see that this is a solution to a social problem, but people would not patronize the project because of issues of consultation. In building sustainable social enterprises, what are some key lessons young people should consider in terms of bringing on board all interested and all those all stakeholders who matter, so that people will really accept your enterprise, your services, and own them? Selassie, are you with me, please? Hi, Selassie. Hello, Selassie.
I think he needs to
Hello,
unmute
Selassie.
his mic.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
It's true. My
Yeah,
mic went on
did
mute.
you get
Sorry.
my question?
Yes,
Selassie, did
yes,
you get
I
my
did.
question?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. So we're asking this question about how to get your product or your services align with the needs of the market, and
Yes.
how do you get stakeholders to come on board, to support your idea. So there's a whole process you go through to design a product or a service, and the basic step to starting is just the idea. But before you come up with the final services or product that you want to put out, you would have to go through a research process, go out there, speak with the segment of people you think your idea would serve, and get the sense of what is their priority, and then work with them to develop the product. So I'll give you a practical example. When we were designing the toilet facility product, we went through a whole year or a whole month or 6 months or so process of product design, where we went out there to speak to the people to find out how they even go about defecating, what challenges they are facing, and everything. And then we came up with a product from that particular conversation. We took the product back to them to look at. They tested it and they passed their comment. We brought it back. We updated it with the comment they had. We went through that process, so a co-creation process where the services or the product was developed together with the people who will be purchasing it. Before we got to the point where we said that, okay, this is a product that will sell. So don't just sit in your bedroom and come up with the idea and think it will sell. Go out, test the idea, speak to people, do some survey, get their ideas on what you want to offer them. And then you'll be in the process to getting close to having something that will be relevant to the market. In terms of stakeholder engagement, there are very different ways of going about it. When I started off with the same project that was the toilet project, we had to identify which government institution or which international organization or which other organization has interest in sanitation, and how are they going about it, and what is the missing link in what they are trying to do, and how does our product fit into that missing link. Because mind you, you have to treat the stakeholders as also your customers, people who would have a certain interest in your organization. There should be something that would administer to their need as well. So you need to interrogate all of these questions to be able to get committed stakeholder on board. You should also be very cautious of getting stakeholder for just stakeholder's sake, because not every stakeholder play out well for your organization. You have to also be very careful and choosy about that.
Okay, thank you very much, Selassie. Any question from participants? Okay, Selassie, I must thank you very much for your time, and we hope to engage further. You could share your details, your email or other handles with us so that people can contact you if they want to.
So yes. For quickly, what I also advise is maybe after the conference you can share a note around, and then in that note you can include my email. But my email is kselassie@gmail.com.
Okay, you can you type, please? Are you in a position to type?
Okay, type here.
And while you're typing, I just want to reiterate John's words and say thank you so much for your presentation. I think when you have somebody who is living social entrepreneurship every day and what it means to them, it's very critical for us to be thinking about how do we define ourselves. Do we do NGOs? Do we do a social enterprise? What are the pros and cons of doing one or the other, and what are the kind of things that you need to think about when you are starting a social enterprise? So we really thank you for your time and for helping discuss these issues, because I always tell people, I'm a co-founder of Yalda, and I always say that I can go back a few years ago and say to my younger self then, don't start Yalda as an NGO. Actually, start it as a social enterprise so that it will be financially sustainable. You can do the things that you need to do instead of always being applying for grants, etc.
Right. So there's in this time, there's even a need for every organization that is in the social space to re-engineer itself into social entrepreneurship to some extent, because gradually there's the donor fatigue or donor funding dry up that is setting in. So organizations that are in the social space have to be creative in how they want to do their financial sustainability. So I thank you, John, and the Yalda team for this opportunity, and I hope it was very informative to your audience, and we certainly will keep it in touch. I have to run quickly to another meeting ongoing, and I wish all of you the very best in your endeavors.
Thank you, Selassie, for your time as well. Bye. Okay. Thanks, colleagues, for your time and participation in this webinar. I'm most grateful. For Bukamo, do you have any announcement or any comments? Final.
No, it was super duper. I loved every minute of it. Definitely helped clear some things and clarify some things in my head about social entrepreneurship. And I think it's one of those webinars that, again, young people are asking this question to Yalda all the time: how do they start social enterprises? So something that we can do even in the future is, how do you fund your social enterprise towards the end of the year? I think it would be a good webinar topic for those, because this was a general teaser or opening. I don't know if Vivian or Vuyo have anything else to say as well. And please unmute your mic.
Well, from my side and to the audience, I believe the speaker was very great. And in as much as there was no questions as much as possible, but I believe that he captured us very well in explaining the social enterprise concept, more especially on the human-centered design thinking, which needs to be simultaneously and always active. And the nicest approach that he brought about the product development, developing a product together with the user. It's such a great idea. So I believe the topic on its own, I had thought he was going to continue because he had stated that he will wait for a moment and have some questions and continue. So I believe there is more that we can gather and also acquire from him as an experienced person. As you can see, that the social enterprise concept at the starting or at the beginning, it was well conceptuated to say it deals with the need, but in the same time in optimizing that service to be profitable and to generate money to run itself. So I was very well excitingly captured. My thinking was he was going to say more and more and more. That's why I didn't have questions, and I believe he needs to come back at a great and applicable time where we can explore the topic more in depth than we were doing now. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you. Any comment from Vivian? Okay. So I thank you for. Okay, Vivian.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, please.
So yeah, I agree with him. That speaker he seemed like someone that had a lot of ideas, great ideas to share. Maybe time constraints or whatever reason, I would have loved to also hear from him. I mean, the issue of social enterprise is one that is, bringing up a lot of discourse across the continent, and there are a lot of challenges, like he stated, that young entrepreneurs or young people in general have. So I think is very realistic and is very, appropriate at this point in time to be having discussions that border around this topic. So yeah, I think that's all for me.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So, point well noted for future planning. Okay. So thank you all. I think we'll end the webinar here, and the session has been recorded, so we will share it in due time to everyone and all the network members. Thank you for coming. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Oh,